Hello guys, this is Medico. Due to some technical difficulties in my systemic pathology review video, some parts in gastroenterology have been cut. So I am uploading a separate video for gastrointestinal disorders.
First, let us discuss disorders of upper gastrointestinal tract. Herpes labialis is a common vesicular circumoral lesion with eosinophilic intranuclear inclusions. It is caused due to herpes simplex virus 1. Now let us see about Sjogren syndrome. It is a connective tissue disorder characterized by xerostomia or dry mouth, keratoconjunctivitis sicca, and autoantibodies to SSA, that is RO, and SSB, that is LA antibodies. Now let us see about achalasia. In this case, there is esophageal dysmotility caused by inability of lower esophageal sphincter to relax. It occurs due to loss of ganglion cells in the mesenteric plexus. Secondary achalasia can occur due to Chagas disease. In this case also, there is loss of mesenteric plexus in the esophagus. Now let us see about sliding hernia. It is also known as axial hernia. It is a type of hiatal hernia in which the stomach and the cardioesophageal junction slide in and out of the thorax. Now let us see about Zenker diverticulum. It is also known as pharyngoesophageal diverticulum. It is pharyngeal outpouching involving more than one layer of the esophageal wall. It results in food accumulation and chronic halitosis. Now let us see about Mallory Wistar. It is retching induced laceration of gastroesophageal junction resulting in hematemesis and mediastinitis. This picture shows endoscopy findings in a case of Mallory Wistar. It has high incidence in alcoholics. Now let us see about Borao syndrome. In this case, there is complete rupture of the esophagus, that is, all layers are ruptured. It can occur due to severe retching. Now let us see about Menetrier disease. In this case, there is hyperplasia of gastric surface mucosal cells. This picture shows endoscopy finding in a case of Menetrier disease. Now let us see about dumping syndrome. It can occur after vagotomy. In this case, there is unimpeded passage of hypertonic food to small intestine. This causes distension and diarrhea. Now let us see about neoplastic disorders of the upper gastrointestinal tract. First, let us see about pleomorphic adenoma. It is also known as mixed tumor. It is the most common salivary gland tumor. It contains a mix of epithelial and mesenchymal elements. Now let us see about Warthin tumor. It is benign salivary tumor containing cystic spaces lined by double-layered eosinophilic epithelium, which are the oncocytes embedded in dense lymphoid tissue. Warthin tumor is also known as papillary cystadenoma lymphomatosome. This picture shows histopathology of Warthin tumor. This is the papillary formation which is lined by tall columnar cell, and these are the dense lymphoid cells. Now let us see about oral hairy leukoplakia. In this case, there are irregular white mucosal patches in the mouth of an AIDS patient. It is caused due to Epstein-Barr virus. It is important to remember that 95% of all oral cancers are squamous cell carcinomas. Now let us see about esophageal carcinoma. The risk factors for esophageal carcinoma can be remembered by the mnemonic ABCDEF, that is achalasia, Barrett esophagus, corrosive esophagitis, diverticuli, esophageal webs, and familial. Now let us see about esophageal squamous cell carcinoma. It is the most common esophageal carcinoma. It occurs in the proximal two-thirds of esophagus. It is associated with alcohol and tobacco use. Now let us see about Barrett esophagus. It is intestinal metaplasia of squamous epithelium in distal esophagus. It occurs in response to prolonged injury like long-standing gastroesophageal reflux disease. Esophageal adenocarcinoma is associated with Barrett esophagus. In this case, there is mucin-producing glandular tumor of distal one-third of esophagus. Remember, esophageal squamous cell carcinoma occurs in proximal two-thirds, whereas esophageal adenocarcinoma occurs in distal one-third. Esophageal squamous cell carcinoma is associated with alcohol and tobacco use, whereas esophageal adenocarcinoma is associated with Barrett esophagus. Now let us see about gastric carcinoma. A mnemonic to remember the risk factors is chance, that is chronic gastritis, Helicobacter pylori infection, A blood type, nitrosamines. 6. That is, men greater than 50 years of age are at higher risk for developing gastric carcinoma, and eating habits like low fiber diet. Now let us see about Linitis plastica. It is also known as signet ring carcinoma. This picture shows histopathology of Linitis plastica. You can notice the signet rings. It is infiltrating carcinoma causing extensive thickening of stomach wall leading to leather bottle stomach. Now let us see about Krukenberg tumor. It is gastric carcinoma that has metastasized to the ovary. Now let us see about Virchow node. It is metastatic spread of gastric cancer to supraclavicular node. Now let us see about pediatric gastrointestinal disorders. Tracheoesophageal fistula. In this case, there is difficulty with feeding starting from birth and excessive oral secretions. Other features include inability to pass nasogastric tube, no gas in abdomen, and early pneumonia. Now let us see about pyloric stenosis. In this case, there is non-bilious projectile vomiting and abdominal olive in epigastric region. Now let us see about duodenal atresia. In this case, there is bilious vomiting. X-ray shows double bubble appearance and it is associated with trisomy 21. Now let us see about intussusception. It commonly occurs at ileocecal junction. It is the most common cause of small bowel obstruction in toddlers. Now let us see about meconium ileus. In this case, there is failure to pass meconium in the first 48 hours of birth. So there will be abdominal distension. Meconium ileus is associated with cystic fibrosis. That is, in cases of cystic fibrosis, there will be meconium ileus. Now let us see about gastritis. Gastritis can be divided into acute gastritis and chronic gastritis. Chronic gastritis is further subdivided into type A chronic gastritis and type B chronic gastritis. Type A chronic gastritis is also known as fundal chronic gastritis. A mnemonic to remember the features of type A chronic gastritis is 5A's. That is, it is an autoimmune disorder with autoantibodies to parietal cells and intrinsic factor. There will be achlorhydria, pernicious anemia, and it is associated with aging. Type B chronic gastritis is also known as antral gastritis. A mnemonic to remember here is B for bug. That is, type B chronic gastritis is usually caused by Helicobacter pylori infection. Now let us see about acute gastritis. It is also known as erosive gastritis. In this case, there is coffee ground emesis from mucosal inflammation. This picture shows endoscopy finding in a case of acute gastritis. Now let us see about peptic ulcer disease. There are two types, gastric ulcer and duodenal ulcer. In case of gastric ulcer, the pain is greater with meals. A mnemonic to remember here is pain is greater with meals in case of gastric ulcer. This will cause weight loss. Gastric ulcer can occur due to decreased mucosal protection against gastric acid, and it is also associated with non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug use. And let us see about duodenal ulcer. In this case, pain decreases with meals. A mnemonic to remember here is in case of duodenal ulcer, the pain decreases with meals. This causes weight gain. Duodenal ulcer is almost 100% associated with Helicobacter pylori infection. In this case, there will be hypertrophy of Brunner glands. It is also associated with blood type O and elevated gastrin levels. Duodenal ulcer can occur due to elevated gastric acid secretion or due to decreased mucosal protection. Now let us see about the complications of peptic ulcer disease. It can lead to bleeding, penetration, perforation, and obstruction. In case of posterior duodenal ulcers, there can be massive hemorrhage from erosion of gastroduodenal artery. Perforation of ulcer can lead to irritation of left diaphragm, causing left shoulder pain. Now let us see about malabsorption syndromes. First, let us see about celiac disease. It is also known as non-tropical sprue. In this case, there is gluten sensitivity. Histopathology shows flat proximal intestinal mucosa with marked villus atrophy, as you can see in this picture. There are also lymphocytes and plasma cells in lamina propria, as you can see here. Celiac disease is associated with HLA-DQ2 and HLA-DQ8. It is also associated with an increased risk of T-cell lymphoma, gastrointestinal, and breast malignancy. Now let us see about disaccharidase deficiency. The most common cause of disaccharidase deficiency is lactase deficiency. Lactase deficiency is basically a brush border enzyme deficiency resulting in bacterial digestion of unabsorbed disaccharide leading to osmotic diarrhea. Now let us see about Whipple disease. It is caused by Trophorema whipplei, which is a gram-positive actinomycetes. Clinical features include steatorrhea, weight loss, hyperpigmentation, polyarthritis, fever, and lymphadenopathy in an older white male. There will be distinctive PAS positive macrophages in intestinal mucosa in case of Whipple disease. Now let us see about A beta lipoproteinemia. It is an autosomal recessive defect in chylomicron assembly resulting in an absence of chylomicrons, VLDLs or LDL in blood. There will be acanthocytes or Burr cells in peripheral blood smear in case of A beta lipoproteinemia. This picture shows Burr cell seen in a case of A beta lipoproteinemia. And let us see about diverticular disease. Diverticulosis is the most common cause of painless bleeding from the lower gastrointestinal tract. It is seen in almost 50% of people over 60 years of age. The most common site of diverticulosis is sigmoid colon. And let us see about diverticulitis. It is diverticular inflammation causing left lower quadrant pain, anorexia, nausea and vomiting. The complications of diverticulitis include perforation, peritonitis, abscess and obstruction. And let us see about ischemic bowel disease. They are common in the watershed areas of gastrointestinal tract, which includes splenic flexure and rectosigmoid junction. And let us see about intersusception. As discussed earlier, it is telescoping of intestine resulting in intestinal obstruction. This picture shows CT finding in a case of intersusception. And let us see about volvulus. It is complete twisting of the bowel around its mesenteric base. The most common site is sigmoid colon and it is common in elderly. This picture shows CT scan finding in a case of volvulus. Now let us see about pseudomembranous colitis. It occurs due to overgrowth of exotoxin producing bacteria. It is caused by Clostridium difficile. Now let us see about appendicitis. Clinical features include nausea and vomiting, anorexia, leukocytosis and pain at McBurney point. Now let us discuss about inflammatory bowel disease. There are two types. They are Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. In Crohn's disease, there is patchy inflammation throughout small and large bowel and stricture. In case of ulcerative colitis, there is continuous and uniform inflammation in the large bowel. The age of onset for inflammatory bowel disease is 15 to 35 and 55 to 70 years. In case of Crohn's disease, the symptoms depend on location of disease and the symptoms may include abdominal pain, diarrhea, weight loss and fatigue. Bloody stool is not very common in case of Crohn's disease, but malnutrition is common in Crohn's disease. In case of ulcerative colitis, the symptoms may include stool urgency, fatigue, increased bowel movements, mucus in stool, nocturnal bowel movements and abdominal pain. Bloody stool is common and malnutrition is less common in case of ulcerative colitis. And let us discuss about Crohn's disease in detail. As discussed earlier, it can involve any portion of the gastrointestinal tract. It usually affects terminal ileum and colon. There will be fistulas and fissures in Crohn's disease. There will be longitudinal punched out aphthous ulcers. There will be skip lesions. X-ray will show string sign due to bowel wall thickening. This picture shows string sign in a case of Crohn's disease. Histopathology will show transmural inflammation, non-caseating granulomas, and there will be cobblestone mucosa. Crohn's disease is also associated with watery diarrhea, nephrolithiasis and stricture formation. It is also associated with ankylosing spondylitis, pyoderma gangrenosum and amyloidosis. It may mimic acute appendicitis. Now let us see about ulcerative colitis. It is pancolitis with crypt abscesses. Clinical features include bloody diarrhea, pseudopolyps and rectal involvement. Like Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis is also associated with ankylosing spondylitis, pyoderma gangrenosum and sclerosing cholangitis. Ulcerative colitis can lead to toxic megacolon. It has an increased risk of colorectal carcinoma. The risk of colorectal carcinoma is very high in case of ulcerative colitis when compared with Crohn's disease. Now let us discuss about neoplastic disorders of the lower gastrointestinal tract. First, let us see about B-cell lymphomas, which are also known as maltomas. They are the most common histologic type of gastrointestinal lymphomas. They account for 95% of cases of gastrointestinal lymphomas. Now let us see about carcinoid tumor. It is the most common tumor of appendix. It arises from neuroendocrine cells. Carcinoid tumors secrete serotonin, histamine and prostaglandins. It is important to remember that ileal, gastric and colonic carcinoid tumors tend to be more aggressive. Now let us see about carcinoid syndrome. It is metastasis of carcinoid tumor to liver. This causes vasomotor dysfunction, gastrointestinal hypermotility, bronchoconstriction, hepatomegaly, and right-sided heart valve stenosis. Carcinoid syndrome can be diagnosed using 5-hydroxy-indolacetic acid, that is 5-HIA, in urine. Now let us see about neoplastic polyps. The various types include tubular, villus, and tubular villus adenoma. Tubular adenoma is usually benign and pedunculated. It is the most common neoplastic intestinal polyp. It accounts for 75% of cases. And let us see about villus adenoma. It is highly malignant. It is a sessile tumor with finger-like projections. Tubular villus adenoma shares features of both tubular and villus adenoma. And let us see about colorectal carcinoma. Risk factors include presence of colonic villus adenomas, inflammatory bowel disease, low fiber and high animal fat diet, age more than 60 years, positive family or personal history. Now let us see about the clinical features of colorectal carcinoma. Left-sided lesions present with blood in stool, whereas right-sided lesions present with anemia due to occult blood loss. The most common site of colorectal carcinoma is sigmoid colon. Now let us discuss about autosomal dominant polyposis syndromes. In Gardner syndrome, there are colonic polyps, osteomas, and soft tissue tumors. It is associated with abnormal dentition. Now let us see about familial adenomatous polyposis or FAP. In this case, there are hundreds of colonic polyps. The malignant potential of FAP is around 100%. Now let us see about Turcot syndrome. In this case, there are colonic polyps and CNS tumors. Again, the malignant potential is around 100%. Now let us see about hereditary non-polyposis colorectal carcinoma. It occurs due to defect in DNA repair, leading to many colonic lesions, especially proximal lesions. The malignant potential is around 50% in this case. Now let us see about Peutz-Jeghers syndrome. In this case, there are benign hamartomas of gastrointestinal tract. There is also melanotic pigmentation of hand, mouth and genitalia. There is no malignant potential, but it increases the risk of other tumors. It is important to remember that APC gene is mutated in familial adenomatous polyposis, Gardner syndrome and Turcot syndrome. Now let us see about acute pancreatitis. A mnemonic to remember the causes of acute pancreatitis is get smashed. Gallstones, ethanol are the major causes. Other causes include trauma, steroids, mumps, autoimmune disorder, scorpion sting, hyperlipidemia and drugs like didenosine, which is an antiretroviral drug. Some other causes of acute pancreatitis include ischemia, infections, pancreatic cancer and peptic ulcer disease. Now let us see about the laboratory findings in case of acute pancreatitis. There will be elevated serum amylase within 24 hours. The serum lipase will be elevated in 72 to 96 hours. There will be hypocalcemia and glycosuria. Now let us see about the complications of acute pancreatitis. There can be progression to chronic pancreatitis, abscess, pseudocyst and hypocalcemia. There can also be focal fibrosis and diffuse fat necrosis, adult respiratory distress syndrome and disseminated intravascular coagulation. These are all the complications of acute pancreatitis. Now let us see about chronic pancreatitis. The causes can be remembered by the mnemonic ABCCD, that is alcoholism, which is the most common cause in adults, biliary tract disease, cystic fibrosis, which is the most common cause in kids, calcium, that is hypercalcemia, and divisum, that is pancreatic divisum. Now let us see about pancreatic adenocarcinoma. The most commonly mutated genes in case of pancreatic adenocarcinoma are KRAS and P53. KRAS is mutated in more than 90% of cases and P53 is mutated in around 60 to 80% of cases. It is important to remember that almost 2/3 of pancreatic adenocarcinomas occur in the pancreatic head, leading to painless jaundice, which causes malabsorption and Kurweiser gallbladder. Kurweiser gallbladder is enlarged palpable gallbladder. In pancreatic adenocarcinoma, there will be Trousseau syndrome, which is migratory thrombophlebitis. The prognosis of pancreatic adenocarcinoma is poor and it is very aggressive. Now let us see about disorders of bilirubin metabolism. In cholestasis, there is conjugated hyperbilirubinemia. Now let us see about hereditary hyperbilirubinemias. In Gilbert syndrome, there is mildly reduced UDP glucuronidase transferase. The patient is asymptomatic. It is associated with stress in 6% of people. And let us see about Dubin-Johnson syndrome. It is an autosomal recessive defect causing decreased canalicular excretion of bilirubin conjugates. This leads to grossly black liver. The patient is asymptomatic. Now let us see about Crigler-Najjar syndrome type 1. It is due to autosomal recessive absence of UDP glucuronidase transferase, which leads to elevated unconjugated bilirubin, which causes jaundice, kernicterus and early death. Now let us see about Rota syndrome. It is autosomal recessive defect causing asymptomatic conjugated bilirubinemia. Now let us discuss about various liver disorders. In cirrhosis, there is fibrosis, nodular regeneration of hepatocytes and disruption of parenchymal architecture. Now let us discuss about the types of cirrhosis. There are two types. They are micronodular and macronodular cirrhosis. Micronodular cirrhosis can be caused due to chronic alcoholism, hereditary hemochromatosis, primary biliary cirrhosis and Wilson disease. Macronodular cirrhosis can be caused due to hepatitis B virus, hepatitis C virus, alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency and Wilson disease. Now let us see about the effects of hepatic failure on various organ systems. In eye, they can cause scleral icterus. Neurologic features include coma, hepatic encephalopathy, which is characterized by asterixis, hyperreflexia and behavioral changes. Hepatic failure can lead to peripheral edema and malnutrition. Skin findings include jaundice, palmar erythema, spider angiomata and caput medusae. It can lead to testicular atrophy, gynecomastia and loss of pubic hair. Hematologic findings include anemia, bleeding tendency due to reduced coagulation factors and splenomegaly. Hepatic failure can lead to hepatorenal syndrome, which is acute renal failure secondary to hypoperfusion. Gastrointestinal manifestations include fetor hepaticus, ascites, esophageal varices and hemorrhoids. Now let us see about alcoholic hepatitis. Histopathology shows Mallory bodies. These are the Mallory bodies seen in alcoholic hepatitis. The AST-ALT ratio in case of alcoholic hepatitis is more than 1.5. Now let us see about Budd-Chiari syndrome. In this case, there is occlusion of inferior vena cava or hepatic veins with centrilobular congestion leading to congestive liver disease. It is associated with polycythemia, pregnancy and hepatocellular carcinoma. Now let us see about veno-occlusive disease. In this case, there is obliteration of hepatic vein radicals following bone marrow transplant. Now let us see about Wilson disease. It is also known as hepatolenticular degeneration. In this case, there is copper deposition in liver, kidneys, brain and cornea leading to asterixis, basal ganglia degeneration and dementia. Lab findings include decreased ceruloplasmin. There will be Kaiser-Fleischer rings in cornea and cirrhosis. Now let us see about chronic hepatitis. In this case, there will be lymphoid aggregates and interface hepatitis. This picture shows histopathology of chronic hepatitis demonstrating lymphoid aggregates. Now let us see about hepatic adenoma. It is asymptomatic and it may be an incidental finding in young women taking oral contraceptive pills. Now let us see about peliosis hepatis. In this case, there are sinusoidal hepatic dilations from use of anabolic steroids. Now let us see about HELP syndrome. It is hepatic disease of pregnancy. HELP is an acronym for hemolysis, elevated liver enzymes and low platelets. Now let us see about alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. It will lead to panacenar emphysema and liver cirrhosis. Now let us see about hereditary hemochromatosis. In this case, there is triad of bronze diabetes, skin pigmentation and micronodular pigment cirrhosis. Lab findings include elevated ferritin, transferrin and elevated total iron. The total iron binding capacity will be reduced. An interesting fact is, in hereditary hemochromatosis, the total body iron is sometimes high enough to trigger metal detectors. Now let us see about primary biliary cirrhosis. It is associated with anti-mitochondrial antibodies. Congestive heart failure will lead to nutmeg liver, which will eventually lead to liver cirrhosis. As discussed earlier, in chronic alcoholic abuse, there will be micronodular fatty liver. Other clinical features of chronic alcohol abuse are portal hypertension, asterixis, jaundice and gynecomastia due to liver failure. Now let us see about hepatocellular carcinoma. Risk factors can be remembered by the mnemonic watch for ABC, that is Wilson disease, alpha 1 antitrypsin deficiency, carcinogens like aflatoxin and polyvinyl chloride, hemochromatosis, alcoholic cirrhosis, hepatitis B and hepatitis C. Hepatocellular carcinoma spreads through hematogenous route. It is associated with elevated alpha fetoprotein. Now let us see about liver metastasis. It is the most common type of malignancy in liver. A mnemonic to remember primary tumors which cause liver metastasis is cancer sometimes penetrates benign liver, that is colon cancer more than stomach cancer, more than pancreas cancer, more than CA breast, more than CA lung. Now let us see about cholesterolosis. It is change in the gallbladder wall due to excess cholesterol. It will lead to the formation of strawberry gallbladder. Now let us see about cholangiocarcinoma. It is bile duct cancer. It is associated with Opisthoarcus sinensis, which is liver fluke infection. Now let us see about Klatskin tumor. It is tumor arising at the junction of left and right hepatic ducts. Now let us see about ascending cholangitis. It is inflammation of bile duct. It commonly occurs due to E. coli infection. Moving on to disorders of gallbladder. First let us see about Courvoisier's law. It states that an enlarged palpable gallbladder with jaundice is likely the result of an underlying malignancy, often in the head of pancreas and not from a stone in the common duct. This is because in case of stone, the gallbladder is typically too scarred from infection. Now let us see about Charcot triad. In this case, there are spiking fevers with chills, jaundice and right upper quadrant pain, which is biliary colic pain. Charcot triad is seen in cholangitis. Now let us see about cholelithiasis. Risk factors can be remembered by the mnemonic 4F, that is fertile, fat, 40 years of age and female. The most common type of gallstone are mixed stones which have components of pigment and cholesterol stones. Now let us see about the complications of cholelithiasis. Biliary colic, common bile duct obstruction, cholecystitis which can be acute or chronic, ascending cholangitis, acute pancreatitis, gallstone ileus and adenocarcinoma. These are the complications of cholelithiasis. Now let us see about viral hepatitis. Hepatitis B virus is DNA hepatinovirus. It has long incubation period of around 3 months. Hepatitis D virus is also known as delta agent. It is a defective virus requiring HPS-AG as its envelope. The infection may lead to a carrier state in case of hepatitis B virus, HCV and HDV. All these three spread by sexual, parenteral and transplacental transmission. There is risk of hepatocellular carcinoma in case of HPV and HCV infection. Immune globulin vaccine is available for HAV and HBV. Now let us see about HAV or hepatitis A virus. It has fecal-oral transmission and it has a short incubation period of around 2 weeks. Now let us see about HEV or hepatitis E virus. It has waterborne transmission and it has high mortality rate in pregnant women. Now let us discuss about hepatitis serologic markers. HPS-AG is antigen found on surface of HBV. Its continued presence suggests carrier state. HPS-AB is antibody against HPS-AG. It provides immunity to HBV. HPC-AG is antigen associated with core of HBV. HPE-AG is antigen in the HBV core that indicates transmissibility. HPE-AB, that is, it is the antibody to HPE-AG. It suggests low HBV transmissibility. And let us see about IgM-HBC antibody. It acts as a marker for HBV infection during the window period in acute phase. Window period is the period during acute infection when HPS-AG has become undetectable but HPS-AB has not yet appeared. During this period, IgM-HBC antibody acts as marker for HBV infection. Now let us discuss about infectious diarrhea. Bloody diarrhea can be caused by Salmonella, Shigella, Campylobacter jejuni, enteroinvasive E. coli, enterohemorrhagic E. coli, Yersinia enterocolitica and Entamoeba histolytica. Rotavirus is the most common cause of diarrhea in infants. In Entamoeba histolytica, there will be 10 to 12 loose, bloody and mucous diarrhea stools per day due to ingestion of cysts. Vibrio cholera are comma-shaped organisms causing rice water stools. Now let us see about caliciviruses. These include Norwalk-like and Sapporo-like viruses. They are the second most common cause of gastroenteritis in kids after rotavirus. Now let us see about Shigella. They are non-motile organisms and they lead to bloody diarrhea. They have very low ID50, that is infectious dose 50, that is only small numbers of organisms are needed to cause disease. Now let us see about Yersinia enterocolitica. It is usually transmitted from pet feces. Salmonella is a motile organism. It is lactose non-fermenter. It also causes bloody diarrhea. Now let us see about Campylobacter jejuni. It is a comma or S-shaped organism causing bloody diarrhea. It grows at 42 degrees Celsius. Now let us see about Cryptosporidium. It causes watery diarrhea with extensive fluid loss in AIDS patient. Giardia lamblia is responsible for foul-smelling diarrhea after returning from a camping trip. Now let us see about Clostridium difficile. It leads to watery diarrhea caused by antibiotic-induced suppression of colonic flora. Now let us discuss about food poisoning. Bacillus cereus food poisoning is associated with reheated rice. Clostridium perfringens is associated with reheated meat dishes. Clostridium botulinum is associated with improperly canned food. Vibrio parahemolyticus and Vibrio unificus are associated with contaminated seafood or raw oysters. Staphylococcus aureus is associated with meats, mayonnaise and custards. The food poisoning in this case starts and ends quickly. Escherichia coli O157H7 is associated with undercooked beef products, and Salmonella is associated with raw poultry, milk, eggs and meat.
For disorders of other systems, please check out my systemic pathology review video. If you have any suggestions, please let me know in the comment section. If you like my videos, kindly subscribe. Your subscription will encourage me to make more videos. Thank you.